All right, welcome everybody to this podcast, and I'm so happy to be spending a few minutes talking with William Min, who, as you've heard, is our new coordinator of youth and outreach. And I've known William for a little while, but some of you don't, obviously. So this is a chance to chat with him and get to know him a bit more. So I'm going to ask him a few questions. And first thing, you and Tori have four boys, 9 and under, in your house. Like, how loud is your house?
It can get pretty loud. Thanks for having me, Matthew. We actually have a dog as well, and he's the loudest. He's a small white dog, and he gets
Yeah.
pretty loud. We did have a cat as well, so our house was pretty lively for a while.
Wow.
But it gets pretty loud at times, especially after school. There are three of them are in school now, and our youngest goes to daycare
Okay.
now that my wife is at school, and so it's really quiet for a few hours. But when they get
Mhm.
home, I don't know where they get the energy, but it's um yeah, it we're trying to learn to bear the fruit of patience a little bit more. And so everyone will get to experience a little bit of that once the six of us pile into the church come November, but we're looking forward to that.
Yeah. What breed is the dog, by the way?
That's a good question. We thought it was a Pomeranian, but he's a 12-year-old Pomeranian
Right.
mixed with something. We think it's a
Okay.
Spitz or something like that, but
Right.
yeah,
Well, I'm
he's a
sure well
troublemaker.
sure well loved. Let's just back up a little bit, because obviously Jesus is the most important thing. Like, how did you become a follower of Jesus?
A few years ago, my wife asked my oldest brother that, and he said something to the effect of, "I don't think I've ever not thought I was saved."
Mm,
And that really planted the seed in my heart because my father was a Presbyterian minister for many years and transitioned to the United Church for the last few years of his ministry. But growing up, we were raised in a Christian household, and my father was, very dedicated to his church ministry. And growing up, it was just never really a question of, am I a
mm,
Christian or not? Having said that, uh, I think it became, a more of a personal kind of, I want to be a follower, I want to be a disciple,
mm.
making that conscious decision.
Yeah.
I want to be a disciple of Christ happen in university. When
Mm,
I joined a Christian club, at the time it was one version of the Campus Crusade for Christ.
right.
They changed their name a few times to Power to Change, and it was the Korean group. So there were, anyway, lots of different name changes. But at the end of the day, it was through that campus ministry that I began to understand what it meant to be, a disciple and what it
Mm,
meant to be to live out, the Great Commission and how the Great Commission was something for me to
mm,
listen to and to be obedient to. Because I think growing up, that was never part of, my upbringing, that, learning to be a disciple is this and that kind of thing. It was just, I grew up thinking that I was a Christian. And so for
mm,
better or for worse, I think I thought of myself as better than a lot of people growing up. But
mm,
university, that's when it all became a reality and something very personal.
mm.
That from that point on, wanting to live a life for for Christ and for building His kingdom has been the number one priority.
Mm. Yeah, I think I remember reading something. I think it was Billy Graham who said, he remembers a time when he like made a decision for Jesus, but his
Yeah.
his wife Ruth, similar. She's like, I grew up in a Christian household. I never don't remember a time when that wasn't the case. Um, I think it was Saint Francis. When I was reading some stuff about him, for him, it was like he had a bunch of these experiences, which were like a series of yeses. The more
Mm.
he understood, so yeah, I relate personally to what you've said because it's like a series of yeses as you go through. Oh, this, and then personal and pursuing, and yeah, no, I appreciate that. So, Westminster, what attracted you to this position at Westminster?
To be honest, it's kind of hard to say because I've kind of just left the door open for God in terms of where He will take us, from here. As people at Westminster will know now, I've been the minister here at First Presbyterian Church in Penetanguishene for 5 years. And my father and other people always told me that around the 4 year, 5 year mark is when you start wanting to ask some important questions about
Mm,
where your ministry goes from here. And so I didn't have much of an inkling that I needed to move anywhere or I needed to make drastic actions. But
mm,
I think that kind of allowed me to leave my heart and my mind open to any opportunities that came
yeah.
my way.
Mm.
And so again, I wasn't actively searching for a change, but one thing, I heard about the opportunity, one thing led to another. And I think fairly quickly, the turnaround on that was fairly quick,
Mm.
in terms of feeling a sense that, okay, this is the direction that God wants me and my
Mm.
family to move in.
Wow.
I've been maybe this isn't the greatest thing to share here, but I've been out of youth ministry for 5 years, and and over the last 5 years, so much has changed. So I feel like might need to learn new things. I'm definitely not part of the TikTok generation at all. I have no idea what that any of that means. So having to learn, the ins and outs of what youth culture looks like now. But at the same time, I've been hearing people around me say things like that I would be a good fit for that kind of ministry, that they see
Mm.
that kind of gifting and that kind of potential. And so, while personally I hadn't really given it a whole lot of thought, to hear that affirmation from other
Mm-hmm.
people,
Yeah.
as we think of a call, as we think of the direction that God leads us, it's good to hear that public affirmation. And I think that's led to, with the way things played out, a firm affirmation from God saying that
Mm-hmm.
this is where He wants us to go. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, we're thankful for that.
Yeah, I think that public affirmation is good too, because sometimes when yourself, you're thinking through things about your own discernment and everything. We're in our own minds all the time, so it's hard to know, and get that perspective. But when someone else says something to us, yeah, I would agree. It's like, okay, that's someone else who isn't me reflecting on that way. And as I've thought about you and looked at your experience, I've had the same sense as well. And and we've talked about this, but I'll say it here as well, just so people know. You're coming into a context where there's a lot of support, there's a lot of good volunteers and people who are doing things. So you're coming into kind of a team environment, which is going to be great. But in terms of youth, what is something that's vital to their faith development so far as you've seen and experienced it?
I think the two main things for me that have been important, in my mind and heart recently. First is the idea of the gospel being communicated in truth and grace.
Mm,
When in John we read how Jesus came full of truth and grace. So trying
right.
to marry those two things and trying to figure out how that plays out in life and in ministry. So there is the element where there needs to really be a clarity in the gospel and what the gospel is, without necessarily trying to sugarcoat things or dance around hard subjects. I think the youth, as they grow older, especially, deserve to be given that truth, to the best of our abilities to communicate clearly what that truth is, but
Hmm.
also again, as they grow older, learning to trust them with a lot of grace, trusting them to have to do the work themselves in terms of working out their salvation for themselves and trying to go through that. For me growing up, a lot of the way we were raised as Christians was a lot more disciplinary and not
Mm,
as much grace maybe at times. And there's some good and bad to that, I think. But ultimately there is an element where we have to carry that truth well, but also to entrust that to the youth and ultimately to God, to walk them through that process of discovering that truth and working out that salvation for themselves. So that's the first thing that's kind of been.
okay.
But the other part is also the importance of, I guess, the primary spiritual caregivers of the youth. Now, this isn't always easy, and I think it's a challenge depending on the family situation. But ideally, in its most healthiest places, a youth to grow up where their spiritual caregiving and nurturing is happening mainly at home is important.
Yeah.
Is to so I think a lot of times we may tend to just unload to the church. Here are my kids. You take care of them and
Yeah.
raise them as Christians. But there
Hmm.
is an element where they have to bring that home, and the home is the place where the spiritual growth and formation happens, and the church is there to support that, of course. So the church family is important, the family is important, and again, I know that can be challenging and is not always the reality for a lot of youth and a lot of families, but to work towards that, I think would be important.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's helpful. Thank you. Um, what in light of the fact that people are listening to this and wanting to get to know you better, you'll be coming, over to Westminster later on in November. But how would your wife Tori describe you to someone who has never met you?
Um, so you've only seen me in pictures, but I think the first thing that she would tell people is that I'm very short. She told me that she had never seen someone as we met on campus in at the University of Toronto in Mississauga, and she said she had never seen someone as short as me. And
That's
that
weird because I
seems
don't
like
think
an
you're that short.
exaggeration.
I don't
Yeah.
think you're short.
Yeah, it's an exaggeration for sure. I think she really means that she just never thought that she would either date, let alone marry someone who was a good 10 centimeters shorter than her.
Maybe she's tall. Is
So,
she like 7'4" or?
no, not that tall. So for reference, I'm 5'3", I think, last time I checked. So I'm definitely not the tallest of the bunch. But
Other than
um,
height, what is there a characteristic that she might say?
I mean, playfully, she'll often refer to me as kind of a grasshopper. If you're familiar with like the Aesop fable, Ant and the Grasshopper story. Oh,
No,
really? Well,
no.
the ant is, the story is, it's a short story where the ant is working all summer long to gather food, and the
Yeah.
grasshopper is up on his stalk playing on his guitar kind of thing. And come winter time, the grasshopper has no food and goes to the ant to beg for food. So she says I'm a bit of a grasshopper. Now, this isn't to say that I don't work hard for all those listening, which I'm sure is a bit of a concern. But I think it's more along the lines of I work hard on the things that I love and are passionate about.
Right.
I tend to get, really even a little obsessed over things when it draws my interest and peak.
Hmm.
So I have many different interests, and they come in waves. For one season it'll be music, or one season it'll be DJing, or one season it'll be this and that. And so I kind of dive in to those kind of things. But when it's something that I'm passionate about,
Hmm.
and something that I love, I tend to work hard at those things, and those things excite me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's good.
No, I hear that. No,
Um,
that's good. I think, um, yeah, I appreciate your calm confidence, and maybe that fits into the. You don't seem to be too, you don't get freaked out about things in the moment as much, which I appreciate. But speaking of interests, you raised them. What is aggressive inline skating? As I said to the
yeah,
congregation, it hurts my back saying that phrase.
yeah.
But what's the deal with that?
So it's definitely one of those master of none, type. It's actually something that I've recently gotten into, that I've always wanted to do since, like, I
Okay.
think junior high school. So I was taking pictures of me doing it and sending it to my friends from high school, and it's like I finally done it, right? But the idea is essentially rollerblading, where you're doing kind of like skateboard tricks, I guess, jumping
Oh,
on
okay.
rails and ledges, and trying to grind those and slide along those. So
Right.
yeah, my knees and my body doesn't thank me all the time for that. It's
Tell me,
it's
wear a helmet.
I really need to buy one. I really need to
I
get
will
one.
buy you one. I will buy you. All right. Like so. Anyway, what's is there anything else that you think the congregation should know about you?
Um, well, despite being a minister for the past 5 years and doing, ministry with people for so long, me and my wife, I would say, we're not the most outgoing people. So I would ask for a little bit of graciousness in that, especially as we
Mm-hmm.
come into a new environment. But we will always welcome, a chat, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would hope that people will not be discouraged to come say hi to my family and I. We might have a little bit of that, that Asian kind of stoic kind of, um bland faces, but it's not that we're mean. It's just we're just a little shy around new people. So
Right.
we'd appreciate a little bit of your help in this.
Yeah, for sure.
We don't need you to come on too strong and invite us over for dinner or anything like that, but a hello and introduction and lots of patience as we learn new names, which can take a while, would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. We will do that. Um, yeah, everybody. So this we've been talking with William Min, and hopefully this has just been a bit of an insight, a bit of a sneak peek into to him and his life a little bit as we look forward to his ministry. But as a final thought, what's your favorite Bible verse right now, and why?
I've always wanted to find like my favorite Bible verse,
Yeah, some
but
people have
right
like a
now,
verse for their life or
yeah.
something. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and this one has been, ringing true for the last forever. It's the one I take to my visitations, and especially now, as oh, actually, we didn't mention it on the podcast, or my father having passed away just
Mm,
about a month ago today, actually.
mm,
His the Bible verse that he had selected for our family was from Proverbs 3, 5, 6, which is trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths.
yeah.
I actually like the two verses that follow as well. Be not wise in your own eyes, fear the Lord, and turn away from evil. It will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones.
Mm,
And so this has been really important for me as in the grieving process as well, and has been very helpful knowing that not only am I called to trust in the Lord with all my heart, but knowing that my dad in his ministry did as well.
mm-hmm,
And even just through this transition period, not knowing, am I really going to be the best fit for this congregation? And when it comes to youth or outreach, do I really know what I'm doing? You might hear me say that quite often. I have no idea what I'm doing, but
None of us do, man. None of us do.
I'm glad to hear you say that. But in all that, trusting in the Lord, with all your heart, leaning not on your own understanding. Oh, that's a lot of comfort. In all
Mm,
your ways, acknowledging him and trusting that he will make straight your paths, trusting that God will take us where we need to go, whatever that looks like. And I've appreciated that. And the older I get, the wiser I get, which I need a lot more wisdom, but the older I get, certainly it's becoming more true for me every day.
mm-hmm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a good word. Thank you. Um, and we are praying for you and with the passing of your father. And I know that he had a big impact on you, and was a man of great faithfulness. And so we rejoice that he is with the Lord for sure. But we will pray for you and Tori and the boys and the family. Um, on that verse, I think that's such a powerful one. I've been reflecting on in Matthew 7, Jesus, in the end of the Sermon on the Mount, basically gives the definition of wisdom, which is hearing his words and putting them into practice, which is
Mhm.
so great. It's like his words are
Yeah.
more profound, they're more steadfast, they're more reliable than my words.
Yeah.
His words and then acting on them. And so there's a really close connection between that and what you said about Proverbs 3. But anyway,
Yeah.
so thank you, Willie, for taking some time to introduce yourself a little bit. I know people are looking forward to meeting you and everybody else, and God bless you.
Thank you very much.